Hey, we're here with another episode of Before You Buy. As usual, you know, it's me, Jake Baldino, talking about all the latest games, giving you some straight-up gameplay and our thoughts on them, and today we're talking about Knack 2. First of all, shout out to Donkey, because I'm pretty sure I can assume what the comment section is already going to be like thanks to him. But let me be 100% real, I wasn't the biggest fan of the original Knack. I know a lot of people weren't into it, but it found an audience with some people, but it was just fine, I guess. Not terrible, but just competent and not very memorable. And I am really pleased to announce that Knack 2 is also the same. It's fine, I guess. It's kind of fun, though. Not very memorable, but also still loads better than the original Knack. It's a good improvement. It's got some elements to it that actually make it pretty fun. The story is the weakest aspect of the game, though. Knack 2 is a tale of a weird place where goblins exist and ancient robots are taking over a city and all sorts of stuff happens. It's very much like a Saturday morning cartoon, but one I couldn't really bring myself to care about much. And I know it's clearly for kids, but I can often really see the value in stuff like that and still enjoy it. But here with Knack, I was bored. It's not bad, but I just didn't jive with the characters at all. The same was for the first Knack, and that goes here. The stakes do get fairly high, and there are some nice scenes, but ultimately it's pretty forgettable. That's all whatever, because actually playing the game is really enjoyable. There are just enough elements introduced to make the game feel pretty clever at times too. The big change up from the original game, if you don't know, is that now you have the option to shrink down to a tiny child-sized Knack at any time you want, and the game really runs with this idea. The game is working at its best when you're constantly switching sides to go through like cracks to find a secret, maybe squeeze through a vent shaft, or use the shrinking essentially as a ducking mechanic. It makes for quick and easy little environmental puzzles that are enough to make you feel a little bit clever and smart, but still never really difficult enough to slow you down, which really just helps the pacing with the game. This makes transitions to combat and stuff also very smooth. The game is just paced really well, and you move from location to location very quickly. They all run the gamut from like forest to desert to battlefield and city and ancient ruins, and some look really, really great, while a few others come off kind of uninspired. But thankfully, all the actual platform sections are pretty creative, and while never near super challenging, they still manage to make you think or play a little bit outside the box sometimes, and to me, that's important. On the combat side, though, things are much more engaging. There can be a bit more challenge and involvement to the combat. While some exploration and platforming sections feel like you can just breeze through with your eyes closed, the combat manages to be simple and fun, but also engaging, and you actually have to pay attention. You're dodging, parrying projectiles, which are coming at you almost constantly, and doing heavy and light attacks, and eventually using a variety of new attacks through holding the button or combinations, and you get all those through a pretty nice little level up system that's simple, but it's kind of like a sphere grid from a Final Fantasy game. But then, of course, there's also the size stuff, where sometimes you're smaller than enemies, and sometimes you're bigger than enemies, and sometimes to like a really extreme degree either way that makes for some good scenarios. And it's pretty cool. It's definitely the main draw here, and it's clear, because now you're also getting these special swappable invincibility attacks that you can swap out throughout the game, as well as a few more like passive abilities called gadgets that you find through the environment. Plus, add in the factor of Knack taking certain other elements on his body, like ice or iron, that give him completely different abilities. It's almost like a new class, essentially. And it really shakes things up and makes things not feel really stale along the adventure. It does a good job there. The elements also factor into exploration and puzzles pretty nicely, too, which I liked, and they didn't grate on me at all. But if you can tell where I'm getting at, the game overall is very, very easy. There are multiple difficulty modes, but the game's actual mechanics do just skew towards the easy side no matter what. And like I said, if you've played a lot of video games, the environmental stuff you can really just do with your eyes closed, which just kind of leads to the experience being a bit, not bad, but just forgettable. Of course, that's just how I'm personally feeling, but between that and the story, it's not really the best thing in the world. But at 11 or so hours after finishing the game, which I did cruise through with like little issues, you unlock a nifty little New Game Plus mode, which is always a plus, I guess, sorry. And the game does look and run pretty solid. Like I said, some environments are kind of lame, but there's a lot of really colorful and creative stuff going on, and some good music. I had a couple of frame rate drops here and there, but most characters and things going on screen at once all remain solid and look pretty sharp. One other thing I got to mention is that the co-op is nicely done and pretty easily implemented. It scales when a player joins the fray, and you can't do too much together, but the game world does work well with two Knacks running around and messing stuff up. Plus, I mean, I don't know, I don't have any, but if you got kids, it's probably a good way to play with them. So honestly, while I'm not totally feeling this one, I can't really bash it at all, because overall, I do think Knack 2 is a big improvement from the first game. Definitely not a bad game at all, but just not Game of the Year or anything. thing. But I do want to know what you guys think. PlayStation fans or something, if you have been playing this game, I want to hear what you think, because, you know, I just throw you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion, but now I definitely want to hear yours, because if you picked it up day one, chances are you're probably almost finished by now, so I want to know what you're thinking. And if you're looking on the outside, maybe you don't even have a PlayStation or anything, how do you feel about Knack? Do you think this is a good mascot platformer game, or is it falling short? I do want to know whatever you guys think about this stuff. If you got any questions for me, hit me up in the comments, but if you got anything else, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, at Jake Baldino as usual. You know the deal. But thank you guys so much for coming around. Clicking the like button really does help us, and subscribing if you're new is a good idea too, because we really appreciate it. We put out stuff all the time. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.